How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Kathryn?
I'm fine, thanks. Thanks for agreeing to this interview. It's great to see you.
Of course, I'm excited to chat with you.
Okay, so for the viewers, I'm Kathryn Rose Newey, and I'm doing a series of videos with people who are helping to save the Earth. I'm with Sonia Faruqi, who is an author of two extraordinary books, really, Sonia, I think, is fair to say. Project Animal Farm, which is her first book, a documentary-style non-fiction book exploring the dirty underbelly of intensive factory farming across the world, and yet to be released, soon to be released, novel called The Oyster Thief, about mer people, set in the, I think it's the Atlantic Ocean, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, which also has an environmental focus as well, highlighting some of the environmental impacts of human interference in the oceans. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Right, so Sonia, let's start with kind of where, your past, because you weren't always doing this, were you? You had a very different life before being an author.
I went to school at Dartmouth College in New Hampshire in the US, graduated with economics, and I found my way onto Wall Street, where a lot of my classmates were going. I was working late into the night, often midnight or after, at my cubicle, crunching some numbers. It was very, very different than what ended up happening in Project Animal Farm. I moved to Toronto, Canada, because my family was moving here, and I decided to volunteer at a dairy farm. Now, little did I know that little volunteer vacation, as I was imagining it, would turn into a trip into the entire agriculture industry around the world.
Yeah.
So it was very organic, very much of a naive beginning, I would say, into what became a relatively serious project.
Right. And I think in the book you say you'd never really had much experience of animals at all before you went to that farm.
My upbringing had always been in cities, so my exposure to farms was very limited. And I'm finding that's increasingly the case. The world is becoming more and more urbanized. We're really losing a connection with nature and with farms as well, with what we're eating, with where it's grown, how it's grown, the animal part especially. So in Project Animal Farm, when I went to the first farm, the dairy farm, I found myself quite intrigued by the cows. They're huge. They're about 1,300 pounds.
Wow.
And they're very friendly. I didn't know what I'd been expecting, but I hadn't really been expecting these quite friendly, sensitive animals, and I found myself quite liking them.
Right. Okay. And then of course that sort of sparked this whole journey that you've alluded to. You sort of ended up taking a very long, convoluted, unexpected, surprising, often uncomfortable journey. I think it's fair to say not only physically around the world, but really psychologically and spiritually for you as well. So you started at that dairy farm, but then you ended up somehow following some kind of, I don't know what it is, some kind of stubborn streak within you that you probably didn't even know existed, didn't you? Because you just kept going, didn't you? You just kept going from farm to farm.
Yes. I started to meet farmers, and just through talking to them, I'd ask them what they do. I'd be interested in going to their farms. And I started to realize that I was learning so much at these farms: cows, hens, chickens, turkeys, pigs. I was learning so much that most people don't know, from how animals are treated, to the usage of antibiotics, to environmental pollution that results. So I wanted to write about it. And I also became interested in the idea of finding solutions. And that's what led me to travel globally, to the United States, Mexico, Belize, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the United Arab Emirates, to see what other countries were doing and what could be done better.
Wow, so you've kind of ended up a bit of an expert, really, haven't you? Because you must be one of the most well-traveled kind of farming experts, if you like.
There's not very many, for better or for worse.
So, and then eventually you worked your way through that journey, and you felt that you'd found some solution, you found some answers, and then at some point you must have got home and you decided to put it into a book, which is called Project Animal Farm. And of course, it's been critically acclaimed. You've got numerous strong endorsements from some of the world's foremost environmentalists. For example, Peter Singer, who's author of Animal Liberation, the book that pretty much launched modern animals' rights movement. I'll read this endorsement that he wrote. It's on the back cover, isn't it, of your book? Peter Singer says, "Let Sonia Faruqi take you on her courageous personal journey of discovery. I thought I already knew everything there is to know about modern animal production, but I learnt many new things from this very readable book, and you will too." Well, so that's pretty
very nice of them.
Yeah. So you taught him a thing or two. Great. So, and he wasn't the only one. I mean, I think on the book cover alone, there are about 7 endorsements from various public experts or authors for the book.
Yes.
So how did you go about getting those endorsements, and, were you surprised that they were so positive, so supportive?
I did reach out to people like Peter Singer, as you mentioned, Temple Grandin, and several other folks, John Robbins, Francis Morlepe. I followed their work, Animal Liberation included, and it has affected me. So it was interesting for me to be going to them, talking not about their book, but about my own book, and asking them if they would be willing to read it, and if they liked it, to mention that they liked it. So I was very fortunate, and I find myself very grateful to them for having liked the book and supported it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great. So, but not only critical acclaim, so you've been shortlisted for a number of awards as well for this book.
Yes, it was very exciting.
Yeah, so did you have to enter the competitions, or was your book automatically entered? How did it work?
It usually works by entering the competition. So my publisher in the US would mail copies to certain places where it was a fit.
Right.
These were a few places that seemed to fit. And there's a lot of entries, of course. So it was inspiring and encouraging to me to be nominated for these.
Yeah, great. Well done. Okay, and then obviously you've got another book just about to be unveiled. It's a novel, so it's fiction this time, not documentary style. It's called The Oyster Thief. I believe it's due for release in October this year. It's described as an underwater odyssey. So why did you decide to write fiction this time?
It was a huge leap for me in every way to go from nonfiction to fiction. Because not only had I written nonfiction, but I also mostly read nonfiction. But at the same time, I find that I've been quite influenced by certain fiction books in my life. And I love a good story where I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm relating to the characters and seeing the world differently, and not based on what I'm told by the author, but based on how I'm feeling based on the different characters in the story. I also find that fiction can be more mainstream than nonfiction.
Okay.
So it has the power to perhaps reach more people who would otherwise not necessarily be reached. Because at least in nonfiction, usually you purchase the book or come across the book if you're already interested in the topic. And in fiction, it can be a more sort of general or broad audience.
Yes.
The idea for it fell into my head on January 1st, 2015. It's I never expected it. It was freezing in Canada, and I wished I could escape to tropical waters. I couldn't. It was hard to book a last-minute flight, so I just opened my laptop and I started I'm making my own underwater world.
Wow.
And and that's where it began. I didn't know where it would lead, whether it would be a book. There were lots of starts and lots of stops. And the process of writing fiction was quite challenging itself.
Yeah.
But my nonfiction background helped in that the book is research based. So I snorkeled, I scuba dived, I swam with sharks, and I've read a lot about the ocean itself to be able to ideally convey the setting and the issues in a way that's accurate and that resonates. That's been my goal.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in reading some of it, I noticed that you have lots of different types of coral, for example, and I imagine those are real. I imagine, are they?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Every fish or seaweed or anything, even stone that's mentioned, I've researched it, and because the story is based in the Atlantic, I've made sure that everything I'm mentioning is actually found in the Atlantic. So the story itself is the foreground and it's primary. The story of a mermaid and a human man meeting and going on this quest for an elixir.
Right.
It's a love story, murder mystery even, an adventure story. But it also has themes of ocean conservation, and I fell in love with the idea of being underwater or having an ocean setting.
Yeah, and I think that makes it different, doesn't it? That it's about mermaids in an ocean. It's quite unique. As an author, I think you've talked a little bit about this already, but I just want to talk a bit more. So as an author myself, doing a similar thing, because I also write stories with environmental themes, I recognize that this novel gave you the opportunity to sort of let loose your creative side, your imaginary side, which maybe you weren't able to do with the non-fiction. And you've got some really rich, beautiful descriptions in your novel. To give you as a taste, I'll read the short extract which is on your website.
Sure.
The mermaid's scales were bronze, and they shimmered like hundreds of pennies arranged close together. Her immense blue-green eyes gave a look of fragility to her face. Yet he found her eyes unsettling. So did you have fun writing it? It sounds like you did.
I did. It was interesting to imagine these fictional people underwater and on land, and to try to see how life would look if we could live underwater. The ocean is very interesting because although most of the earth is, of course, water, we know less about much of the ocean than we do about the moon. It's really very foreign to us, to the average person, and even to scientists. The species that exist in the ocean, the majority of them perhaps have not even been discovered yet. So it's really a very foreign place. And I found it interesting to let my imagination go somewhere where we as mankind really haven't been able to go properly so far. It was a very interesting sort of exercise and a thought experiment and a story for me.
Yeah. And I think that's clear from your writing. Can you tell us a little bit about your main characters, who you've called Coraline and Izar, and where you got your inspirations from for them?
Oh, absolutely. Now, in nonfiction and Project Animal Farm, the book is full of people, and they're real people. I've portrayed them as accurately as I could, changing only their names for privacy. So in The Oyster Thief, it was interesting to be coming up with completely fictional people. Coraline is a 20-year-old mermaid. She lives with her parents and her brother, and she's an apothecary. The apothecary idea, or the healer idea, I got from my family, in the sense that my mom and brother are both doctors.
Oh, wow.
So I've had that exposure to medicine.
Yeah.
Her personality is a bit like mine in some ways. At the beginning of the book, at least, she's quite conventional to start, and doesn't want to upset anyone, and is obedient and honest and hardworking. She has a lot of virtues, but at the same time, she's not really very confident. isn't too sure of herself to start with. The name Coraline and the names of all the characters come from the sea and the stars.
All right.
Her name in particular is the name of a kind of seaweed or algae that grows on coral reefs, and it indicates the health of a reef.
Oh, yeah.
Her father in particular is a coral connoisseur by profession, so his job involves coral reefs and trying to keep them healthy, and so he calls her Coraline based on this algae that he loves.
Right.
And Izar, on the other hand, was different for me. He's a human. He's 28 years old, very brilliant. He works at Ocean Dominion, and he's invented a robot called Castor, about 20 feet tall, who's going to break open the ocean floor for diamonds and gold.
Okay.
And actually, on the note of this, I came up with this concept as fictional, this idea of underwater mining for gold and diamonds. But that concept has actually become fact just last year.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yes. So companies have just started going into the ocean to mine them for gold and diamonds.
Oh, right.
They've started with diamonds and they're going to start with gold next year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in this sense, this aspect of the book was fictional, but it's also fact unintentionally and unfortunately as well.
Yeah.
Because the way it works is they completely wrench apart the ocean floor, excavate whatever they can, throw everything else back over.
Oh, dear.
So it's not a good area to be getting into with the ocean. But the fact is there's supposed to be huge amounts of deposits of gold and diamonds in the ocean.
Yeah.
So in the end, it's being viewed as a bit of an unused or unexploited treasure trove.
Oh, dear.
But anyhow, back to Izar, that's what he does.
Yeah. Okay.
And his name comes from a star.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Almost sort of without realizing it, be learning about ocean conservation and ocean acidity and mining and all that kind of thing, just through reading an enjoyable story. Yeah.
That's my goal and my hope. And for me, that's how it worked. While I was writing it and researching it, I learned so much about the diversity in the ocean, about all the different kinds of life in there, all the possibilities. And the issues that it's facing as well. But I'm quite hopeful about the future of the ocean, and I think it's very resilient, and it's fortunate for the ocean that we can't really, or until recently, we haven't really been able to get in there in a serious way.
Yes, although like you were saying, they're starting to get that technology now, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm personally just interested now. What are you doing now? Now that you almost, got 2 books under your belt, what are you going to do next?
So the Oyster Thief is in October, and I'm doing a lot of promotion for it.
Right.
Media, podcasts, events, which are all on my website, soniafaruqi.com, which I believe you visited, of course.
Yes.
Beyond that, there might be a sequel to The Oyster Thief. That's something I've been thinking a bit about.
Yeah.
I can't say when exactly it would come out or the exact story, but it would be honing in deeper into the underwater world and to the characters as well.
Right. Okay. And what about the whole, the factory farming side? Are you still involved in anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. I view the 2 books as sort of intersecting. In Project Animal Farm, I was focusing on land animals, particularly farm animals, because there's about 70 billion farm animals on Earth. There's 3 chickens per human being on the planet, but we rarely see them, so we rarely think about them. So that was very much, and still is, front of mind for me, what's happening in the factory farms and spreading awareness about that. The Oyster Thief then allowed me to go into the ocean, to extend out from land and see what's going on. Because similar to factory farms, where the majority of the world really doesn't have any sight or access, it's the same with the ocean. And that's why this whole ocean diamond mining thing that I just mentioned Nobody I know knows about it.
Yeah.
And I only know about it because I was writing my book. But there's so much that happens that we really aren't even told or informed, and it's going to affect our future, and that it's going to affect the future of the earth. So I find it important to get that awareness and that knowledge and interest out. So it's going to be for me about continuing to educate and to interest people as well in the topic of the environment and the planet and all the beings with which we're sharing this beautiful planet. That's my goal.
Yeah, great. Right, and so I know you've mentioned your website already, soniafaruqi.com. Do you have any social media that you'd like to mention, or or where readers can kind of catch up with you?
Oh, sure. I send out a monthly newsletter that people can sign up for on my website.
Right.
I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. People can find me by Sonia Faruqi, just looking for that.
Right.
Or looking for the book names, that should probably come up as well.
Right. Okay, great. And thank you so much, Sonia, for talking to me.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Yeah, keep educating the world, keep getting those environmental messages out. Good luck with your book. Yeah.
I appreciate it. You too.
And hopefully speak again sometime.
Absolutely.